All right. Welcome, everyone. I am sharing my screen. If we can just all go on mute so that we don't have that echo. But thanks, everyone, for joining. I see we've got quite an audience here tonight. Yeah, this is our first big tools and techniques, and we've got an awesome speaker lined up. Fhatuwani, he'll do his introduction a little bit later. And he's going to tell us tonight about navigating data-driven business analysis, what those essential methods are, the tools and the techniques for us as BAs. But before we jump into that, just a few house rules, the tidbits that we need to take care of. If you can stay on mute, please. There's a chat and a QA, which we'll monitor. So you can put all your questions, all the conversations in there, and we'll address that after 45 minutes when we go into an open discussion. Then there's our YouTube channel. Please keep an eye out for that. We post all the recordings on YouTube. You can go back. There's lots of history there. And this one will, in a week's time, it will also be available on the YouTube channel. So go and revisit and share. If you want to become a member of the IIBA, there is a link on our website. There's also a membership address that you can email to, and we'll pick that up. If you want to join, there's a lot of information on our website about membership, how to become a member, and what it all means. On our event page, there's LinkedIn. Go to those, follow us, connect with us. It's always updated. There's lots of activity happening there. If you are a follower, you will see when there's updates for Lean Coffee, when there's updates for tools and techniques and any of the other events. Then also professional development at southafrica.iiba.org. There you can get in contact with the community if you want to become a volunteer, if you want to sign up for any of this upcoming study groups, or you just need more information about mentorship, becoming a mentee or a mentor, lots of information to share, you can just email us. Alrighty, so let's jump into it. Fhatuwani. So he is a qualified business analyst, a BI professional. He's got over 13 years industry experience, of which 8 are business intelligence. So since 2020, he's been officially taken on the role of a business intelligence business analyst, so the BIBA. As a passionate practitioner of business analysis, he was one of the select speakers at the 2024 BI Summit. I had the honor of meeting him as well. An annual prestige IIBA SA chapter event in South Africa, which we host. As a 2025, Fhatuwani serves as an official volunteer in the IIBA SA chapter. He's in the Gauteng region and a dedicated volunteer in that group. He holds a master's in computing informatics, cum laude, from the Tshwane University of Technology. His research was on BA adoption factors in the national public sector domain. It has been published by the International Journal of Business Intelligence and System Engineering. He is also a certified analytics translator and belongs to the global top 500 candidates who achieved 100% result for the enterprise architecture in the era of intelligent enterprise. I must say congratulations on that. Yeah, and that is our intro. Fhatuwani, all yours. Welcome to Tools and Techniques.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Thanks and hi to everyone. Really grateful to be able to speak to you today. So I'm just gonna go straight to it and share my screen. If you can confirm, you can see my screen, Kristen, and everyone else. Yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, so today, as Christian has mentioned, I will be talking on the data-driven business analysis, and this will touch on the tools, the methods, and the techniques that you would be able to employ as a business analyst in that space. And so go to my other screen. So the agenda, I think Christian has already covered a lot about myself. So I won't really go deep into that, just small bits there. Then we'll go into the introduction, meaning setting the scene for what we are talking about today and why it is important, what's covered and what's not covered in this session. We'll delve into, of course, business analysis, which is the reason why we participate in this, and then get into the data-driven business analysis, why the case for that, and then also get into the methodologies that you ought to know, and you can explore the tools thereof, some of the most popular tools, and what industry mainly uses at large, then get into the applicable techniques that you can use as a business analyst in that space. So then we'll get into our conclusion, then we'll do a Q&A. And then the song you heard earlier on at the end of the presentation, you might get to see the reason why I went with that song. So that's basically about today's session. So I will move into quickly about myself, and I think Christian has said a lot. I volunteer with the IIBA. So just a little bit of update. I think the 8 years in BI, I was using 2024 numbers, so it's officially 9 years. So I got into BI coincidentally. So, but yeah, I'll touch on that quickly. And then the global top 5 is actually top 5%, not top 500. But nonetheless, I think that's something that I'm quite proud of. And then you can see my skills there. So you probably in the right hands in the screen. And my interests, personally, I am highly interested in enterprise architecture. I am still trying to be one even today, an enterprise architect, data analytics, business analysis is at the core of who I am, and business intelligence. And what drives me is really, I love to create tangible solutions, right? Solving real world problems. And the space of business analysis allows me to be involved in that, and business intelligence being a bit more technical as well. And I am really passionate about developing other people and also learning through that process, meaning that I love to see another BA through to cut, the red tape so that they don't have to go through the same hardships that, in the past with limited access to information, tech enthusiast, full of gadgets in my life. I'm always constantly researching such. And where am I heading as a person, career-wise? I only have a plan A, and I don't have a plan B. I'm planning to just be a chief information officer, and if that fails, then everything else fails, right? So yeah. So how I got into business intelligence, just quick one. It was experimental. I did a POC. I had a friend who was a colleague and a developer, and it came as a product of an initiative we're doing on enterprise architecture, and we realized we can do this on our own. We assembled a few interns under us. We started that work, self-taught, and then that ended up on my CV, and I got an opportunity to be a BIBA before the word BIBA came in 2016 in one of the large consulting firms at the time in South Africa, and that's where I really learned and I got cooked. And from there, it's been that, however, when I got into the BIBA role in 2020, when it was becoming a thing, where I got in first, I was the first there, and where I'm at as well, I am the first BIBA, official BIBA. So yeah, but that's basically who I am. So I'll move on to our introduction, just to set the scene of what we're talking about today. So today we're going to go in depth as an overview in terms of in the world, and this is based on experience, right? In the world of data-driven type of business analysis. Then we'll go and speak about the go-to methodologies, tools, techniques that you as a business analyst in that specific domain should know, or if you have interest in getting into that space. And then the aim, obviously, today is to expose you to the right tools, the methods, the techniques, so that you can excel in this space. It's not a deep dive into each tool or methodology. Otherwise, we'll need days to do that. Or it's not a teaching to say how to use this tool, how to apply this methodology, but to expose you so that when you start your journey, you will know what to look into. And some of these things will become a little bit more clearer as you delve into that space. So about business analysis, I think we know what AIBA at large, if you're affiliated in one way or the other in terms of how they define business analysis is an enabling factor, right, to then effect change so that those needs are met with the relevant solution. And obviously, what about data? When you get to the data space, there's also a body out there which you need to at least be versed with. Dharma, they're great and long in the game. They also define data itself, right? It's as a representation of information, right, in an organized manner, which allow for, for that interpretation of the data, processing it, and communicating it. And this is where the tools come in and all those methods. So moving into data-driven business analysis and why. So one, you find that there is a push to be able to have an insights, a lot of insights-driven initiative. You would hear, in the corridors or even out there where they say data is the new oil. It's always been the oil. Even AI itself, for it to generate what you needed to generate, it uses data, right? So there is that push to move into a more insights-driven type of initiatives, and then also fact-based analysis based on the data itself. What is our transactional system churning out? Where our customers spending most of their money? All those trends, it's all data. Being able to extract these deeper insights, and also measuring quite a lot of processes, KPIs. Realistically, the data supports that. And also, once all that work is done, it feeds into decision makers in terms of how they can be helped to support their decision making at a strategic level. So this is where you would find yourself playing a role. It's not a small role. It is quite a serious role, but highly enjoyable as well. And what about you? Now, as a business analyst in a data-driven environment, working with such initiatives. So one, you would have seen, I spoke about the Dharma. You need to be able to understand the data management principles, right? Data management, data governance, whatever that may be. You will see it plays a lot of role when you're doing this type of work. You should be able to understand dimensional modeling and relational modeling basically at the core. And this is like your relational algebra, your Philip Cort type of research back then in the 70s, which set the scene for what we see today. You obviously need to be skilled in business analysis. You can do source to target mappings. I will expand a bit on that later on. You should be skilled in one of the few tools in data visualization. This allows you to then engage with stakeholders and play back and understand what they are looking for. You have to understand data warehousing concepts. You will touch on that later in detail. You know and understand the life cycle of dimensional modeling. You can do data modeling, whether be it basic to intermediate. Some of these things you learn as you go, and you have a skill of analyzing data, whether you're using Excel or any other tool, and tools such as SQL, Python, and so forth. These are things, depending on your case, that you will need to be well versed in. And I'm not sure if you're seeing this in my screen. Somebody seems to have been drawing, but yeah. In any case, if someone can help, just take such out. But nonetheless, let's proceed. And when we talk of methodologies in this space, right, in the world of dimensional modeling, data warehousing in the data space is the space that I operate in, as well as a BI business analyst, or you are maybe a business data analyst, or you then called on to be in a role of a data analyst. Is there are two well-renowned methodologies. One is the Ralph Kimball methodology, and the second one is Bill Inmon methodology. Bill Inmon is also known as the father of data warehousing, and these are methodologies that have stood the test of time. They are sound, and they are common practice in industry. You will find that you either servicing an initiative that at a technical level or a strategic project level, it's decided to either go one of the two. So this is important for you as a BA to invest some time into learning and understanding what these methodologies are about, and what they propose, so that you're not so lost when you are operating in that space. There is also IBM have done a very good practical documentation of the same methodology from Kimball, which they call DMDL. They created a whole data model lifecycle design, and it's free in one of their Red Book series. This was written in 2006, but even today, it's still one of the best, in that approach. You could find a little bit of Bill Imon in it, but it's highly based on the Ralph Kimball. It's very solid, and it will take you a long way, given that it's free as well. Now, let's talk about the Ralph Kimball methodology, that approach. One, it's very, it's intent at the core, it focuses on delivering business value, meaning what they do is the methodology on its own is process driven, meaning that you would have, the goal is, if we're doing a finance process, let's build for finance. Let's do a warehouse for finance. What are the data needs? What are the reporting needs for finance? So meaning that you got finance, logistics, and so forth, meaning each business is a star schema on its own. And this is the concept of dimensional modeling, where you think of business process and core data needs as dimensions, and whereas the facts are the measurable numerical types of part of the process that you're trying to to measure, and the dimensions are the descriptors. For example, if you're looking at stock, the sales figure for the month, that's your fact, and what got sold, the product name, and so forth. Those are your dimensions to make it easier to understand for you. It follows and encourages a highly iterative process, so it's faster to do, and by design, it's highly denormalized if you understand entity relationship type of modeling, meaning that it's also designed for faster querying for the end user to then query these business performance matrices. And it encourages also conformed dimensions, but specific to that process that you are building for. All right. And also the grain, the level, granularity is very important in this approach. You'll find that as a business analyst in this space, this is a question that will get asked a lot. At what level are we reporting at? So you need to get to grips with this. So that's basically the Kimball approach. A lot of initiatives, unless if you are in a highly big budgeted program that also is not, time is not of the essence. They go for Kimball. So I'll talk about the build approach. Imon is more at an enterprise level data warehouse, meaning that you build the warehouse for the entire, literally for the entire business first. So it's a top-down approach and it's longer, but the benefits are the conformity is if you've got a customer dimension, you have one customer dimension, then you can build the maths afterwards, meaning that you can build your other processes post this. Everybody hits. This is when they say single version of the truth, this is what they try to achieve, but at the same time, it's highly normalized. It operates almost in flat normal form, meaning that querying is a little bit slower and it's a little bit complex. You need to be very well versed with querying such data because it's a highly normalized structure. And like I've touched on, the star schemas, which would have been the Kimball on the first one, will then come after you've built your enterprise level data warehouse. So these concepts and approaches are important for you to grasp because in most cases, one of the two is really used. And as a business analyst, it's really important to understand at least what they are, what they advocate for. And from a tools perspective, and I've tried to just keep it for an analyst type of tools that you will need. Not so much, getting you deeper into more technical, development type, although that tends to happen from time to time. So for data manipulation and querying, SQL, even in roles nowadays, once you see these types of role, SQL is like an, non-negotiable. And if you, depending on where you at, you might, especially like high transaction, big data type of environments, you might be required to get to grips with how GraphQL works. It was made famous, I think, as Facebook moved to GraphQL. We work with a lot of APIs as well. That's it's an open standard now. They made it open source since 2015. And there is like, if you want to learn, there are communities there. Neo4j is one of the databases that's free to, experiment with such, but SQL should get you through. Visualization, at least know one of these tools. Power BI, I think it's popular. It's also in your job specs nowadays as well for such a business analyst to at least know Power BI. There are others like ClickView that are very proprietary as well, Tableau or BIEE and more, but once you start researching in this space, you will find such and you will be able to get into one of these for free. There is analytics side of things. You might, I've done self-taught Python and R. I've also done a course on Python as well, where I was working at that point in time. So it depends if you are required, sometimes you might just be required to be able to at least read the Python code and do some analysis. Advanced Excel is, I think, almost half of us here know advanced Excel. Just get into Power Query. There's DAX there, which is, I'm also self-taught in DAX on the Power BI side, so they talk to one another. It will be easier. You might work with a proprietary tool where you're at, like SAS and all these other tools. But like I'm saying there, that it's not everything that you need to know here. You should be fine to at least master and know one of each, and the rest you can learn depending on where you are at and where your interests are. Unless if you are thrown in a space where you're working with legacy mainframe systems, you might have to, read up on Adabas and so forth. When I started my journey, when I was doing my traineeship back then, I was in a data management division at a mainframe environment. So got to learn about natural Adabas and the JCL type of, have to be able to read and interpret that type of language. So yeah, it's bigger, but toned it down to what is doable and what you can learn at a point in time. And then from a tool perspective, I mentioned about SQL and the reason why. So SQL is the simplest language, right? You can learn, and it's widely adopted for in the space of relational databases, which mainly most systems at a back-end transactional systems are highly relational. So 9 out of 10 times, and I'm not saying this is an absolute fact, but you will use SQL in one way or the other when you are in a space like this. And it also helps, it creates a good practical base, right, for you to understand how the dimensional modeling world works if you never studied that, because we come from different backgrounds. I come from a technical university, so those things were core, how relational entities work. So it's a very good, and there's a lot of material, right, and courses that you can start for free to learn SQL. And for those who are in this space, you would know the Adventure Works database. It's one of those common open source type of places and free databases to learn on. All right, there's a whole lot of tools. And the structure of SQL, it's actually in 5, right? So the components are, you've got your data definition language. You use that basically to create objects, database objects. Like if you want to create a table, create a view in a database, that's you can also use it to delete. You can also use to modify. So that's what we call DDL, data definition language. Then the data manipulation language. This is now when you are using functions and so forth, while you're creating more analytics views. Data querying language, this is now for you to retrieve the data, right, from your tables, your views, whatever the case, from a relational DB mostly. And then the data control language, though I doubt, unless if maybe you're in an organization where one person wears a lot of hats, this is more for database administrators, like where you grant and revoke access. So that's your DCL portion of SQL. And then your TCL side is the transaction side of things. So where you commit your transactions, you roll back. The last two, it's rare that a person in this space will play in, but depending on where you are at, or maybe if you're doing some stored procs and you're building some stuff and simulating, you might use a commit, and yeah. So that's, you'll see even at the bottom there that mainly the essential ones are between DQL, DML, and DDL, because your DDL will be informing your whoever is doing the development, go and create these objects, and DML, these are the rules, DQL, this is how you retrieve. You might even include the script in there. So DCL and TCL, not much. But yeah, so that's basically why the rationale behind talking about SQL as a place where you would rather want to start once you've chosen also a methodology that you want to know more about, and some of these things, and I'll keep repeating this, are dependent on where you are at and what role you're playing in that project and what is required of you. Understanding sometimes business analysts, they tend to shy away from, having their hand in the technical side of things. But a data-driven BA, there is no way you can avoid this. You can have the conversations at a business level, but you're looking at data, so you need to be tangible. And there's one way or the other, you will have to interrogate the data using a tool and a language like SQL. And you will also need to, understand the methodologies and strategies in terms of how data will be moved from point A to point B so that it can be used in the most beneficial way. And that's where you understanding your Ralph Kimballs of this world, your Bill Inmore, and others come into play. Now, from a technique perspective, right, there isn't really one size fits all, but I will then, talk a little bit around which techniques you will most likely use a lot, and this will be in no order, but stakeholder interviewing key, right? So the thing with a business analyst, and this is a realistic challenge that we often find in this space, right? Having the privilege to have interviewed some people for such a role, is you find we either find someone who's been a business intelligence analyst or data analyst for so long that they're so strong in the technical side, but they lack, the business analysis side of things. Or we find somebody who's very good as a business analyst, but then the other side is lagging. It's quite a challenge, right? So stakeholder interviewing, I think if you're very strong as a business analyst, before you even get into the data space, that's a non-negotiable. But your stakeholder interviewing, once you move into the space of this type of a role, changes how you engage, right? Because data-driven initiatives and their objectives are quite a little bit niched out. And by the time they assemble a project team, a lot of decisions have already been made. So it's worth you a while to then look into understanding data modeling as well, both on the entity relationship side of things and on the dimensional modeling side of things. The dimensional modeling side of things is usually the destination. The entity relationship might help you when you have to interrogate the sources, right? And looking at the data itself, and going back to your stakeholders and playing back the data in one way or the other. Hence, now those other tools I spoke about, like your Power BIs and so forth, you could even still use Excel, are very important to make the stakeholder be able to see, to visualize, because they know what they have in mind. They might have a problem that it takes too long. They, creating all these reports, collecting data here, collecting data there, using Excel, and by the time they have to report it, they are late on their reporting deadlines and so forth, or they're not able to get to the analysis on time. So such things are quite important for you to grasp and at least have one tool that you can use. The one key thing you will find that will be required of you when you're in this space is what we call a source to target analysis and mapping. Typically what it says is, this is where the data sits, this is where it comes from, this is how the data looks like. And if we are to have it, to produce the type of maybe analysis or supporting data scientists to access that data or reporting, this is the ideal data model that it should arrive into. That is you now telling your solution architect, your solution implementer, and based on all those, and you will be in the mix of this, by the way, when they're deciding whether they're going Kimball or Bill, you will be there. That will be based on your analysis. Once you start to interrogate these data sets and the goal of the business, and then you do that mapping, it's a lot more involved. You have business rules that you have to put there. So that's key. If you can get to grips early with learning what a source to target mapping is, that I would advise you get to learn that early and how it should potentially look like. Then you should be able to do, to understand the concepts of, multidimensional analysis. You don't need to actually have them like in a live cube, but you need to understand the concept. There's, concepts of your Cartesian plane and so forth, and all of those things, how to pivot the data, what are some of the roll-up rules and drill downs. I spoke about granularity, which is key mostly on the Kimball side of things. This comes into play when you're engaging with the stakeholders. You will find out that information, and you will then be able to, present it nicely to say, how are we slicing this data? Is there a roll-up need? Is there a drill down, a drill across need? All of these concepts you need to learn on them and really get to grips with them and why and how they're supposed to be looked into. And online analytical processing cube design, it speaks to what I just spoke about, your slicing and dicing. It enables that you can get yourself to learning into how to think in a cube nature for analytics reporting. And I was also self-taught this on the job. I had some great mentors there, and I learned on a Microsoft platform back then. It has since moved to the cloud, but it's I think, a good base to learn on. SSAS, they used to call it. And you also need to have the skill of data analysis, just raw data analysis, whether you're pivoting it with Excel and so forth. This helps you to think in a data-driven manner. And there are other things that you will come into play depending on initiatives you are working on, like they might be KPI-driven, right? And KPI, you need to be able to get into that language depending on the type of business you are in. Finance has specific set of KPIs that are standard across in many places, but some industries are very niched out. So you need to be able to interrogate certain formulas and understand what they're trying to achieve. This will help you with your cube design and deciding what is measurable, what are the descriptors around such things. But once you get to grips with it, it opens up and it becomes easier. There is a way to, interrogate such information. And you also, once you learn a tool like your Power BI, Click, and so forth, you have to go and learn something called data storytelling. In my analytics translation course that I did, my latest certification, I think about 2 years ago, this was taught as well. It's a whole method on its own, but it's really good to to get yourself familiar with that. It will help your work faster, how you engage your various stakeholders, both non-technical and technical. And in terms of doing your requirements, this is a very practical role, although you're still fulfilling and you still get sign off on all of these things. And also there are common, when we speak about these methodologies, there is common transformation approaches depending on the source of the data and the vision of the initiative. We have ETL, which is extract, and then you do your transformation, then you load. Then we have ELT, which is your extract, load, and then transform at a later stage. Depending on the approach, the vision, and where you are at and what they're trying to do, it's important to understand this because that drives how you document your source to target mapping. Your developer or whoever's doing the solutioning will know already that, okay, this means we're doing an ELT. So yeah, it really influences how you do your source to target mappings. And then there are standards as well out there and education that you might consider. You might be standing there and say, okay, I'm a business analyst and I'm doing, business analysis, maybe process heavy type of business analysis or just what you call this, your typical transactional systems type of business analysis. I do a business case, BRS, write some functional spec in UML and so forth, and off it goes. And maybe I'm involved in testing. How do I get into this space? The IIBA already has catered for this. They have what we call certification in business data analytics, or what you call CDBA. And you can do that, and it's a it's specifically curated for such, and it will serve as a great foundation and doorway for you to explore further. And then I mentioned Dharma. You really need to get into knowing what they are about. You might find most they're almost I think the de facto standard. Most organizations even have like sittings, like monthly. Once we did a place where we used to sit just the second last Friday, around the data management policies, governance standards, and there are data stewards as well out there. This is a role you can grow into. So it's important to get to grips with us understanding such, because when you're doing the other work, this is core. There would be a policy that guides in place, privacy and so forth, and it's guided by the principles of Dharma. So you also need to be a good all-rounder in this space. You need to get to grips with this and understand where it's going. They also have some level of free seminars. I know in SA, I think IABA hosted one of their guys here, I think a year ago or so, in one of these sessions. So yeah, so that will come in and it will go a long way for you. And other than that, I mean, you need to do, your self-learning. And once you've chosen a space, I have a lot of books as well. I'll just show you one of them. When I chose SQL, I went for that, for data analytics, for the Kimball books. And depending on what you're trying to learn, please get into the space where self-education is very important as well. Apart from learning the tools, get to learn the method behind the tool. What drives this tool, what it allows you to achieve in this space. And the other things will open up as you join forums like where we are right now, and connect with people in that space as well. So yeah, and I think with that, the conclusion is what I'm saying is, look, there's a lot of tools, there's approaches out there, but it's important to start with what is trusted and what is common, and then open yourself, right? Make a foundation for yourself with, I've exposed you to some of those methodologies. Go find out what they are about and what materials can you get a hold on to learn. Can you make connections within your space and guys who are already doing such work, or be it your data team, and to learn and at least master one of these. And then the rest you will add on as you progress, depending on your personal development interest, right? Career interests that you really want to move towards. So that is the conclusion. I will come back to the Q&A. I just wanted to say thank you to the IIBA, the chapter at large, and all of you who came in today, and to explain the song that started. This is the reason why. So this is my other life. So yeah, just for you guys to have a little bit of an icebreaker there. And I think Hussein, to you for Q&A.
Sure. Thanks, Fhatuwani. Sure. Yeah, that was quite a lot of information, quite insightful. I've had a lot of people asking if they can ask questions directly. I'm just going to go through some of the questions that I did pick up from the sections. Okay, so let me go to one that we got in Q&A. How do you see generative AI transforming the role of the business analyst? And then particularly where legacy systems and manual processes are still dominant.
Yeah, look, and we get this question a lot, right? So in our link coffees, I think it's case by case. You can use generative AI, especially for prompts, right? A lot in terms of it makes your research faster as well. But it's how I see AI in general in terms of in business analysis or in other role is it's more of a companion. Instead of you going to try to search for so many things, Stack Overflow, you're able to feed these prompts and say, hey, I'm trying to do one, two, three, four. What are some of those things that I can look into? And it opens you up for that, and not to take the answers as is, in the analytics translation as well. The course I did, we did generative AI as well as part of the modules, and how we can, use such, but use it as a companion, and then look at what it brings you back, so you can go further by yourself and go deeper into what is trusted.
Okay. We have a question here from Dacia. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. At times, I feel there seem to be contradictions in institutions that have change specialists and experts, okay, as well as business analysts. So, how could one try to integrate such business units at the same time delineating those roles?
Yeah, so what happens is expertise, and as to be an expert, you need to specialize first, right, in something. And in such organizations, it happens because they're either too careful, where then they look for people who are from business, who know the business long enough, and put them as experts. Then you come in as a specialist, a business analyst, to then work with these people, right? And for me, what has always worked for me is you should never be too shy to say, I know this and I'm good at this. Could we perhaps, look into working in this manner? And your experts will open up to you as well. And some of them will be very honest to say, look, I got into this role this way. I'm not technically a business analyst, but I know the business so well. And then the synergies start to build, but it has to come from you and saying, look, because now they've put you as an expert, then I'm going to hold back my my specialty. You're not helping anyone, and you're not helping yourself either. Because at the end of the day, as a business analyst, whether you like it or not, they see you as a trusted partner.
I guess you will learn from those situations as well. I mean, and that's why you lead by that example, and then it's also easy to pick it up while you're in the field on your feet thinking, and you're interacting with those different experts, but you also learn from that. Okay, I have a question here from Bonnie. She said, I am business BA and I want to know what I should change attitude wise when moving over to being a BIBA, a BIBA.
So
That's a new word I'm adding to the glossary of terms. BIBA. Okay.
have that question because so attitude wise is we do have, and unfortunately in business analysis we fall into this trap of saying, as a BA, I only end here, the rest is too technical, it's not for me. So you need to see yourself as a participant, right? And you need to ask yourself, is the output artifact wise that I'm giving to the next person? If you give an artifact, whether it be a solution architect or a developer, and they still need to see the business, then there's a problem. You know what I mean? So the attitude is you need to these are just tools and methods, and anybody can learn a tool. So you need to be open to learning, have the hunger to learn anything, And also remember, as a business analyst, all of these technical capabilities are also part and parcel of you. You have systems analysis as a competency that's required out of you. And data is just one aspect of that. So it's more on the thing of, you don't end here. I don't speak English only and produce, textual English documentation. I get myself involved, immersed, and get my hands dirty as well.
Yeah, it's that whole, the end to end, but also there's not a we start at the beginning of the process, where you gather and you do your basic BA stuff, but you see that whole life cycle of whatever that initiative is right up to the end. You get involved in that testing, in the detail, and then the outcome of and that's in the end the value that you add because you've been part of that
100%.
whole process and you learn along the way. Nisa, there's a question. Would there still be a need for non-technical BAs in the next 10 years? Sure.
Um,
Okay.
it's case by case. I must confess something here. I you know I personally have been technical even away from data, even with modeling tools. Like I can model processes in almost any tool in method and methodology, UPN, BPMN. So I don't believe there's such a thing, although there are roles that are called technical business analyst, there's such a thing as a technical or non-technical, be it there's a process analyst. So there will be a need still for business analysis, but the skills required, the tools and techniques that a BA needs to know will then most likely be highly technical. Like I was mentioning earlier, a lot of roles now will ask you if can you do SQL? Do you have knowledge in Power BI? Or by the way, do you understand JSON APIs? Those are the other stuff. Do you understand JSON? Do you understand the language of APIs? So it's the onus is on the BA. Keep learning, So pick up a skill and the rest will go on its own, will come on its own.
Yeah, and I also guess it's that whole thing stay relevant, so you
100%.
don't have any time to go into that stagnant mode. You've got to keep up as times evolve, especially with the whole AI driven generation. We've got to just remain relevant and keep up to speed. So before I open up for more questions, there's one that actually someone popped into the chat and Liana answered it, but I would want you to just give us your view. So the question was Tableau or Power BI? What is your preference and why?
Wow. Yeah. So Power BI, have been with it since its infancy. Just when after Microsoft bought data and intended it into Power BI. And when you've worked with Power BI, you will have your own frustrations and its limitations, and you would wish they could, but look, Power BI is a Microsoft tool. Microsoft are widely used and it's easier to learn. Tableau is, those guys were the kings, right? Tableau, Click. I think Tableau is now Salesforce, if I'm not mistaken. Salesforce bought into that. It all depends, right? But I think for ease of learning and ease of communities and access, you can get anything on GitHub about Power BI. You can actually even build a project there, and you'll get a lot of support, and there's a lot of free material as well around that. So yeah,
And I
but
guess it also because it plugs in, eh? It plugs into a lot of the Microsoft.
but either is fine. You can even
Yeah.
go open source and look into something like Pentao, for instance, and
Mm.
start working on that as well. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got a few minutes left. I see Aubrey's typed a question here. Do you have a strategy that works for you on how to approach learning these tools?
So one, My strategy is, and this is personal. I'm very growth. Uh, I'm always trying to learn and to be honest with you, I don't know if I'm old school, but I work with books. I buy books. I also make sure I make friends with the guys doing the solution in terms of the technical side, just to understand where they're coming from, what they are expecting from me as playing a role as an analyst. And over the years, I've learned that the technical guys really appreciate specs that are really detailed and there was one instance I want to experience myself where a developer said so to me, I've worked for so many years elsewhere. I've never been in an environment where a BA literally gives me a spec like you gave me that tells me what to do. I've always just get the high level stuff and then start the conversation backwards. So for me, it's the passion for completeness, right? To give the next person, not to create work that I should have done for the next person. That's my strategy, basically.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I have a question here from Glenn. I recently got to know that you can even do storytelling and data visualization using Angular and JSON. Is that
Yeah.
something that you think will ever overtake tools like Tableau, Power BI, Glick?
It's Yeah, look for Angular, JSON, it's very it depends on the application being built, right? There is nothing that stops that. I mean, you can do data storing as telling as well with Python without even using Power BI. You can pull up the Python
Mm.
pandas and do all the plots. And so I'm not sure about overtaking because what these guys like Microsoft do end up, they will open up Power BI to talk to these other, languages so much that to bring it home. So there's synergies there as well. So yeah.
True. Yeah, they will sort of layer it, and also depending on what the data is and who your audience is, it depends on how you're going to represent it or present it back to
Correct.
that audience in the view. Not everyone's technical on the receiving end, so there you would use a specific tool for that.
Yes.
Um, what does Kule say? Yeah, having worked in data space, how is the level data in terms of single source of truth? Mhm.
It depends on the maturity of the team and the organization. The truth is, it's never 100%. You'll always have, depending on legacy and limitations, you can have 75 to 80% in a warehouse, and the rest you make way to deliver the data in there. But it's never really streamlined that everything we're going to have this beautiful ETL that picks up the data in this lovely one environment and pulls it through. There is certain places where even by regulation, some data would remain outside certain sources, some by limitations from, the mainframe environment is very, very sensitive to certain types of environments. And it, in certain areas, it doesn't make sense to even move that mainframe the heart, right? You do what you need to do after the fact. So it's never 100%, but it's doable to a certain extent.
Yeah, and I see Guli attached there. Is that achievable? So
Unless if you're like Facebook, you are born already like that. So yeah, if you're born like that, yes, but legacy, it's not easy. But
Mm,
there are ways to make these things work.
okay. Well, we are on the clock. I don't see any more questions, but I'm sure people would definitely want to connect with you. And obviously, if there's any more questions, audience, please flag it through to Fhatuwani. You'll find him on LinkedIn. He did share his details. Yeah, and if you get stuck, just WhatsApp any one of us, and we can share his information as well. The recording will be published on YouTube, but I just want to say a big thank you. I think this was absolutely great, and I can see from the chat just very insightful, good advice. Well done, very inspirational, good learning
Uh,
curve. Thanks so much, Fhatuwani.
Thanks, IIBA, Diana, Chrisen, and the community at large, and all those who managed to make it to this session. And I hope what I've shared will spark some level of research in yourselves and interest, and make it a little bit easier in terms of how you want to start your journey.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks.
Cheers, guys. Bye.